On April 26, 2023, almost exactly 1 year ago from today, Honkai Star Rail officially launched, with its first limited banner being our feisty quantum queen, Seele. Now, I've always believed that Seele's been in a pretty decent spot ever since her initial release. Other than the start of the game, she hasn't been the absolute best DPS, but she has been able to easily compete with them, especially in content that favors her. After all, she has a lot of things going for her. She has an amazing relic set, she has extra turns with Resurgence, she has a hot girlfriend, an older sister, and apparently she also has a lot of doubters. See, what I didn't realize until very recently is there's actually quite a lot of people who believe that Seele is falling off or has already fallen off and has been power crept. I first started seeing this in my Blade video, where I did talk about how I thought Blade was falling off and how Hoyo could potentially help him out with new character releases. The majority of the responses were overwhelmingly positive, but every so often I would see a little comment that brings up Seele's performance. Now, I should probably preface, I'm not calling anyone out, everyone's entitled to their own opinion about characters, and most of these comments talked about Seele in a very constructive way, so I appreciate the discussion. I just found it very interesting that this character that I've been using since 1.0, and who I've been seeing in a ton of insane clears on YouTube, is being described in a way that I never even imagined. Well, this was just my first little taste. After all, there weren't that many comments about Seele, it was just a loud minority. But then a few days later, I stumbled upon this poll posted by a YouTuber I've talked to before, Reba. Seele leads the way at 41% of the votes, even beating out Welt, who really doesn't have that many use cases outside of very niche scenarios. Now, it's very possible people just read the second part of the question, and Seele just has the most votes because she's the most popular character here, but then I scrolled down in the comments, and oh boy, here we go again. Seele is so power crept, I transferred her relics to my new Jinglu. Seele needs something to buff her, she's been power crept over and over and over again. Seele needs to make a comeback, please. Seele was literally immediately power crept, and now she's collecting dust in everyone's account. I could keep going, but I'm sure you get the idea. Now at this point, I just needed to seal the deal. I posted a poll on my own channel asking you guys how good you think Seele is. I split it up into 4 options: top tier, still good but not top, middle of the pack, and not worth it / power crept. And yes, middle of the pack means mid. I didn't write mid because calling someone's favorite character mid is literally worse than insulting their own mother, and I didn't want to face a whole army of Seele mains. Now, from what I've seen, I was expecting most people to go for mid or even right at the bottom in the power crept category. But I'm proud of you guys because winning by a pretty significant margin was still very good but not top, which is what I also believe to be her place in the meta. But there were still some similar comments underneath the post parading the same ideas that I previously showed. Now, before we get to the main chunk of the video, I just wanted to quickly let you guys know that I now have a Discord server. There's only a few people in it right now, and I would really appreciate if you guys could join. I promise it'll be super chill and I'll do some really cool stuff there. Link is in the description below, so please come hang out, it'll be a ton of fun. Well, now that you know why we're talking about Seele, let me show you what I've seen or experienced that makes me believe Seele still stands as one of the best DPS. Let's start with zero cycles. Now, I did see some people once again in my Blade video confused as to why we're using zero cycles to judge character strength since they don't matter. So let me explain. If we just use the ability to 3-star MOC 12, almost everyone can do that. There needs to be a way to differentiate within the characters who can do this. We can't just look at damage per screenshot because everyone has their damage loaded differently in their kit. So we want to look at something a bit bigger, like damage per cycle. Now, ideally, we would have theory crafters who standardize substats and calculate how much damage each character can do in a cycle, but I haven't found anyone who does that like they do in Genshin. So while it isn't perfect, zero cycles are a decent way to see the max performance of DPS units. Now, hopping back on topic, Seele has been able to consistently zero cycle pretty much every single MOC since the release of the game. It doesn't matter if it's a boss fight, or AoE, or non-quantum week, I've found zero cycles done by Seele. She's also been the character who I've seen do these zero cycles with decently low investment. Now, this is purely anecdotal from what I've seen on YouTube, but a lot of zero cycles done by surprising characters like Blade, Shueyi, or even Arlen is almost always done with an E1 Ranmei or an E2 Sparkle. These Eidolons both provide defense shred, which is an absurd damage increase, which basically makes the showcase more about them than actually what the DPS can do. Now, while some Seele Zero Cycles obviously also use E1 Ranmei or E2 Sparkle, I found more for her than almost every other DPS that only uses a Sig Light Cone on Seele and maybe one on Sparkle. And not to mention, most of these Zero Cycles are done off element. I haven't been able to find a full list of the elemental weaknesses of the history of MOC 12, but other than the current one, I wasn't able to find a single quantum weak half. Now yes, I know Silverwolf is a very good Seele teammate and can just force quantum weakness, but most of the times these Zero Cycles don't utilize her at all simply because her single target debuffs aren't very useful outside of a huge boss fight like Sam. Now let's move on to Pure Fiction, our other endgame content. This is where I think Seele is criminally underrated. A lot of people look at Resurgence and think this means compared to other DPSs, she only gets one extra turn every so often. This means since she's single target locked, this isn't that impressive compared to just having AoE damage. Well, the thing they're missing is that Seele also has a big speed buff and also action advance from her basic. Seele straight up just gets way more turns than other DPS units, especially when she can consistently proc Resurgence like in Pure Fiction. When her ult kills, she also gets another extra turn after that. This means more ults equals more turns equals more energy, and it kind of funnels itself and works in like a snowball effect. So despite being a hunt unit, Seele has been able to 40k pretty much every single Pure Fiction since released and has been doing it pretty consistently off element. I've even seen a 1 cycle clear of the current Pure Fiction by Seele. Just to give some context, this is a single target unit killing 38 enemies in a single cycle. Well, why is Seele so strong? Let's start with the simple stuff. The Quantum Relic set is insanely good. 10% quantum damage is pretty nice, but the real money is in the 4-piece. This 10 or 20% defense ignore is really good, as when it works, it's just a straight 11.7% damage increase. Compare this to another 1.0 set, the Lightning set that gives 20% attack after using skill. That's literally just 4 substat rolls. The Quantum set is so good that characters like Jingliu use it despite not being able to utilize the 2-piece quantum damage at all. Seele being able to fully utilize the set makes her relic situation perfect. Now let's go into her actual kit and abilities. First we have this major trace. Following on from the defense ignore from her artifact set, this res pen is insanely good as well. Def ignore and res pen are separate multipliers, but work very similarly in increasing Seele's damage. Now let's look into the most signature part of her kit, and that's her Resurgence. I think Resurgence is a bit underrated lately. Most MOC floors have a lot of adds in the fights, so Seele can easily abuse her Resurgence in these scenarios. Even in fights with just 2 elites, will eventually kill one of the elites, so you'll still get that extra turn from Resurgence at least one time. The only time Resurgence is pretty much completely irrelevant is in a pure single target fight. I also feel like a lot of people forget that when Seele uses her ult, she still enters her buff state. So this 80 damage percent and quantum res pen is still accessible if you aren't proccing Resurgence from her talent. Now let's move on to what I think is the most underrated part of her kit that gets looked over a lot, which is her insane speed buffs and her action advance. Pretty much every insane Seele clear I've seen in both MOC and Pure Fiction isn't done by hitting huge numbers like Acheron, but just by having so many turns in so little time. Seele's speed after pressing her skill is 144, assuming 0 substats or external buffs, and then her A6 gives her 20% advance forward whenever she basics. This makes her by far the fastest DPS in the game currently. Just to give you an example, this insane 0 cycle done in the recent MOC by Yellow VV, his Seele wasn't doing exceptional damage. In fact, most of his ults were only around 100 to 150k damage. But in the entire 0 cycle clear, his Seele had 7 turns, not including Resurgence. Once we throw in Resurgence, his Seele actually had 12 turns. Now obviously Yellow VV has hyper optimized with the speed tuning, but it just shows how Seele's main strength really comes with her action manipulation. Now with Seele having so many turns, she also generates a lot of energy for herself. Her ult is 120 energy cost, with her skill providing 30 and basic providing 20. In this 0 cycle clear, Yellow VV uses 6 ultimates in the full clear. Granted, he is using Tingyun and Hoyo, but Tingyun you should be using with Seele most of the time anyway, and Hoyo only provided energy 1 time with her ult. Now, this doesn't mean you have to copy this exact clear to make Seele good. After all, Yellow VV is a YouTuber who primarily uploads insane zero cycle content. Normal players don't need to do that. Even if you're not getting as many turns as he is, Seele is still going to be a lot faster than other DPS units. So even though her individual numbers may not be as impressive as the big nukes the other top DPSs are doing, all her hits add up over time, so she really isn't that far behind. And no, this isn't me trying to convince you that Seele is actually better than Imbibe de Lune, Acheron, or Jinglu. But just because she's worse than the top doesn't mean she's been power crept, and it definitely doesn't mean she can't come close in certain scenarios. And despite all this, I still wouldn't really recommend pulling her. As much as I love Seele, the reality is, as the very first character we got, she will definitely slowly fall further and further behind. Right now, she hasn't been contested in the quantum DPS path or in her niche of being super fast, but I would be lying if I said that similar characters weren't coming soon. Dedicated Seele mains will definitely still be able to make her work, possibly for years to come, but don't be surprised if she gets consistently outperformed at lower investment by newer DPS units. Now, since most of my most popular videos talk about how Hoyo can buff characters, why not quickly delve into that, but with Seele? I think Seele really likes three types of buffers the most. Firstly, we have action advanced ones like Sparkle and Bronya. Honestly, Sparkle is almost a perfect Harmony unit for Seele, as she provides pretty much everything Seele wants, so in the short term she definitely isn't getting top. But the nature of gacha games is that in the future, even the strongest units right now will eventually get power crept. It could take 2 years or even longer, but eventually Sparkle will no longer be the premium buffer she is now, and maybe Seele can better utilize this new age of Harmony units, but that's a long way away. The next type of buffs that Seele really likes is aura buffs. Because of how often she acts, the buffs that expire based on her turns can often be a bit annoying to work with. Aura buffs are ones like Ranmei's skill and ult, where the duration timer goes down when the support unit takes a turn. This means it doesn't matter how often Seele acts, the buff is always going to be up as long as Ranmei hasn't had her turn yet. This means these buffs don't need to be constantly reapplied, so you won't be wasting skill points or have any unbuffed turns by Seele. Right now, Ranmei is a pretty good Seele support, but she does have some anti-synergy with how she can steal kills for Resurgence. Aura buffs definitely won't be a rare thing, and I think very soon we will get better ones that synergize really well with Seele. Now finally, we have energy buffs. Spamming Seele's ult is really important for her performance, not only because it helps her enter a buff state without killing anything, but also if the ult kills, she does get that extra Resurgence turn afterwards. Ting Yun is a very good buffer in that way, but she's still a 4-star unit. The fact that a 5-star unit like Bronya already has a direct competitor in Sparkle means that a 5-star energy buffer will definitely come soon to compete with Ting Yun. Depending on whether this unit can also benefit Seele in other ways outside of just providing energy, it could be a really good support for her. Now, these three types of buffers aren't particularly niche in any way, and I could definitely see some of them coming very soon, so things are looking bright for Seele. 2 of these buff types could even be combined into one character. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if an energy buffing character also had an aura buff. Now, just to finalize, I don't think Seele's a bad unit, and I'm pretty sure most people agree. I just saw that a loud minority might be downplaying her strengths a bit too much, and I came here to show you guys why I think she's still good. Now, she definitely isn't as good as the best DPS in the game, but I think she can easily compete for now at least. Whether you should pull for her, I'm not too sure about that. That's going to probably need a whole extra video to cover, but she's not even on the banner right now, so don't worry. And that's pretty much it for the video. This is definitely one of the longest videos on my channel, and it did take some time to edit and make, so I would really appreciate a like and subscribe. Also, remember to join my Discord server, link in the description. I'm gonna try and do some really cool stuff there, both with video stuff and maybe some giveaways, so I'll definitely make it worth your time. Until next time, thanks for watching.